Hi, everybody. It's really good to see you. And I just wanted to let you know, very warm welcome to me here at YouTube. This is my first live stream, and I'm really glad that I'm here with you today. So I hope that you can have a fun time now with me, and we're going to talk about and look at the wonderful Margaret Atwood. Now, she's had a very, very interesting life. She was born in Canada, she's Canadian, and she grew up in the woods pretty much. And she was really quite a sort of, when she says she grew up in the woods, she didn't just grow up in the woods in a lovely sort of, gladed sort of woody area. She said she kind of pretty much grew up with wolves. So she had a really interesting early childhood. And she was there with her brother and her sister, and she didn't really go to school until she was about 12 formally. So she spent a lot of time playing. Apparently she spent a lot of time sewing, reading. She had to teach herself to read because otherwise she wouldn't be able to understand or read the funny stories and the funny comic strips and things like that that were in the newspapers and comics that she got, and she loved that. So she had to teach herself and learn to read. Her father was an entomologist and her mother was a dietitian, so they lived this pretty remarkable life out in the woods with all of that kind of like fauna and flora. So she had this kind of vivid imagination, and apparently she wrote her first book when she was 6. It was called Annie the Ant, and it was kind of a, she says later on in life that it was a how not to write a book kind of way of writing a book. I don't think that she was very proud of it in the end. But and also actually what she says later on when she does her fantastic kind of master classes and things about writing is that if a book doesn't catch you, doesn't grab you in the first 5 pages, there's no point bothering, because you're not going to get to the 78th page and find out this amazing revelation until you've actually been kind of like, your imagination has been caught at the very, very beginning. So yeah, I think that's probably something that's definitely something I try to adhere to. And it's, really, really relevant. She's a remarkable woman. She was born in 1939. So she's about 85 now, and she's won several prizes. She decided she wanted to be a writer when she was 16. And she went off to Harvard, actually, and she did her master's at Harvard, and she started to publish books. Now, I've made a little list. She's written so many books. She's written, since 1961, she's published 18 poetry books. She's published 18 novels, 11 non-fiction books. She's also done lots and lots of short stories, and she's written some children's books as well, and some picture books, comic books, that kind of thing. And she's been an incredibly successful author throughout her life, winning loads and loads of prizes. Now, I'm not going to go massively into her novels or into any of her other books, really. I suppose I could mention briefly The Handmaid's Tale, which is something that we're all probably very familiar with. Very sort of dystopian. She said that in the 70s, she thought everything was wonderful and there was this kind of freedom going on, women's lib, women were getting far more sort of rights in the workplace and everything. And then she said in the 80s, everything went a bit kind of bleh, and sort of started going in reverse, because when Ronald Reagan became prime minister and the kind of far right got in with the religious factions and stuff in the US, that's when things started to go a little bit haywire. And she talks about this. She talks about it as being a sort of activation of the evangelical religious right as a political force. And we kind of veered away from that a bit, well, certainly in the States and in the rest of the world, but it's all coming back now. And I think with new changes in the political parties in the States especially, we could see that evangelical far right, where women's rights are trying to be diminished again by men who are much taller than women, who think that they can reign over us. So anyway, enough of that. I'm now going to go into this book, which is really great, actually. I took off the paper cover because I didn't want to ruin it while I was reading it at my desk, and I knew that I would probably get it all squished. And when I opened it up, it's called Paper Boats, and it's The entire collection of Margaret Atwood's poetry from 1961 till 2023, and all of the books are in there. And what's lovely is that there's this little cutout inside. When I looked, all these secrets, when I looked inside on the cover, on the inside of the cover, there's a little cutout on how to make a paper boat. She said that when she was living in the woods with her siblings, her and her brother used to spend a lot of time making models and painting them. So I'd imagine it's something that she was very keen to do, or something, maybe a lovely memory of them being there in the with a lake and playing with these paper boats that they would have done when they were children. I am going to go I'm going to ignore the first the first massive section of the book, and I'm going pretty much to the end of the book, which is a selection of poems that she's written more recently, and a lot of them are to do with loss, and a lot of them are to do with she lost her husband to Alzheimer's, and the loss of friends, and the loss of people as you grow older. I suppose that becomes a way of life, really, very sadly. So I'm going to go into that part of the book because there was so much to cover that I'll probably revisit it another time and go to another book earlier on in her life in 1961, and it'll be really interesting to kind of compare and contrast her way of thinking and the way that she's evolved. I think Margaret Atwood has got a very sort of quite a dark sense of humour, and she looks at things in a very very clever and a very sort of succinct way, and she's extremely brilliant when it comes to use of language. So let's just see what we've got here. I read a few earlier, and I thought I would read these as first, and then perhaps we might just do a little bit of sort of free diving into the book and see where we end up. I'm going to start at the beginning of this part of the book, which is, where is it? Let's find it. I had it all marked out and now it's all gone. It's called The Door. This book is called, part of the book is called The Door. And I'm going to read from the beginning, one of the beginning, very appropriate poems called Butterfly. My father, 90 years ago, at the age of, my guess, 10, walked 3 miles through the forest on his way to school. Along the sedgy Wetford shore of the brimming eel-filled, rush-fringed peat-brown river, leaving a trail of jittering black flies, his hands already broad and deft at the ends of his fraying sleeves. Along this path he noticed everything, mushroom and scat, wild blooms, snail and iris, club moss, fern and cone. It must have been an endless breathing in between the wish to know and the need to praise. There was no seam. One day he saw a drenched log floating heavily downstream, and on it a butterfly. Blue as eyes. This was the moment, I later heard, that shot him off his tangent into the abstruse world of microscopes and numbers, lapel pins, cars and wanderings, away from the 10 square miles of logged-out bush lots he never named as poverty, and the brown meandering river he was always in some way after, that trying in vain to get back to. I think it must be really interesting being an entomologist, doing something that you so love that you just get absolutely captivated and obsessed by it, and it's something that you have to do, and you take your entire family and you go into the woods and you hunt and you search for butterflies for the rest of your life. How cool is that? I'm going to now read a poem about her mother, because her mother was a dietitian, so it'd be interesting to see what she says about her mother. My mother dwindles and dwindles and lives. Her strong heart drives her as heedless as an engine through the one night after another. Everyone says, this can't go on. But it does. It's like watching somebody drown. If she were a boat, you'd say the moon shines through her ribs and no one's steering. Yet she can't be said to be drifting. Somebody's in there. Her blind eyes light her way. Outside in her derelict garden, the weeds grow almost audibly, nightshade, goldenrod, thistle. Each time I hack them down, another wave spills forward. Up toward her window, they batter the brick wall slowly. muffled border and walkway slurring her edges. Her old order of words collapses in on itself. Today, after weeks of silence, she made a sentence. I don't think so. I hold her hand. I whisper, hello, hello. If I said goodbye instead, if I said let go, what would she do? But I can't say it. I promise to see this through, whatever that may mean. What can I possibly tell her? I'm here. I'm here. I wonder if you felt like that when you've maybe been with somebody that you love and been with them as they get weaker and as they start to die, perhaps as they start to just lose that sense of who they are, they detach, their mind and their body becomes detached and they start to sort of slowly fade away. I think that's very accurate what she says. What can you say? If you say let go, will they let go? Will they then be free to go? But do you really want them to go? Or do you just say, I'm here, I'm here? Okay, I'm going to read a poem in this book called Crickets. Again, Margaret Atwood. September, wild aster, fox grapes, tiny and bitter, the indigo taste of winter already blooming inside them. The house is invaded by crickets. They've come inside for the warmth. They creep into the stove and behind the refrigerator, make sorties across the floor, singing to one another, here, 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 here. We step on them by mistake or pick them up, dozens of them, dozens of wriggling black consciences, and throw them out the door. There's nothing for them to eat, not with us. No more harvests or granaries, only tables and chairs. We've become too affluent. Inside, they'll die of hunger. Wait, 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 they say. They fear they'll freeze. Under the broom, their dark armour crackles. The ant and the grasshopper have their places in our bestiaries. The first stows wealth, the second spends. We hold the middle ground, approve the ant, head, love the heart, grasshopper, emulate both. Why choose? We hoard and fiddle. As for the crickets, they've been censored. We have no crickets on our hearths. We have no hearths. Nevertheless, they wake us at cold midnight. Small, timid voices we can't locate. Small watches ticking away, cheap ones, small tin memotones. Late, 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 late. Somewhere in the bed sheets, in the bed springs, in the ear, the hordes of the starved dead come back as our hearts beats. Have you ever been infested by something? Something like crickets or ants. We used to have flying ants when I was in my old family house, and every sort of end of June it was the end of June before they changed the date for the Wimbledon Tennis Championships, and it would always be that first week of the tennis champions, the last week of June, and it would get really hot, and all of a sudden, all over Wimbledon, these flying ants would just rise up from the ground and fly everywhere. They came up through the tennis courts, they came up through our house, they came up everywhere, and they would just fly and they would stick themselves onto our windows and our glass doors and anywhere that they were trying to get out. They came in through a little hole by my Argo in the kitchen, and I'd come home and they'd suddenly all be there. And they'd be trying desperately to get out and fly away, but they would die so fast. I think they come out and they breed, don't they? And then they just they die. And that's what they do every year. Strange, but true. I'm going to go a little bit further on in this part of the book, and I'm going to read a poem about Frida Kahlo. And Frida Kahlo has also become a bit of an icon, and she's almost sort of so iconic that everything about her is recognizable, isn't it? Her headdress, her braids, her clothes, her jewelry, her eyebrows, her lipstick, everything. She's recognizable anywhere and everywhere in the world. And this is a poem about Frida Kahlo, San Miguel, Ash Wednesday. You faded so long ago, but here in the souvenir arcade, you're everywhere. The printed cotton bags, the pierced tin boxes, the scarlet t-shirts, the beaded crosses, your coiled braids, your level stare, your body of a deer or martyr. It's a meme you can turn into if your ending's strange enough and ardent and involves much pain. The rope of a hanged man brings good luck. Saints dangle upside down or offer their breasts on a plate, and we wear them, we invoke them, insert them between our flesh and danger. Fireworks 2 streets over, something's burning somewhere, or did burn once. A torn silk veil, a yellowing letter. I'm dying here. Love on a skewer, a heart in flames. We breathe you in, thin smoke, grief in the form of ashes. Yesterday, the children smashed their hollowed eggs on the heads of others, baptizing them with glitter. Shell fragments litter the park like the wings of crushed butterflies, like sand, like confetti. Azure, sunset, blood, your colours. That's quite a poignant one, isn't it, about Frida Kahlo? All of those iconic attributes that she has, Margaret Atwood mentions and writes about so succinctly that it just paints such an incredible picture in your head. It certainly does in mine. It's so vivid. And I think she's so brilliant at that. She's so good, Margaret Atwood, at actually just pinpointing something very, very succinctly and making it come to life. And she's incredibly good at writing about women, as we know. Right, I've chosen another poem a bit further on. It's called Enchantment. If this were a story I was telling my sister, a troll from the mountain would have stolen her, or else a twisted magician turned her to stone, or locked her in a tower, or hidden her deep inside a golden flower. I would have to travel west of the moon, east of the sun. To find the answer, I'd speak the charm, and she'd be standing there, alive and happy, come to no harm. But this is not a story, not that kind of a story. That's kind of very open-ended poem, isn't it? About loss. If this were a story I was telling my sister, a troll from the mountain would have stolen her, or else a twisted magician turned her to stone, or locked her in a tower, or hidden her deep inside a golden flower. I would have to travel west of the moon, east of the sun, to find the answer. I'd speak the charm, and she'd be standing there, alive and happy, come to no harm. But this is not a story, not that kind of story. When Margaret Atwood was little, she used to read fairy stories. She used to read some gruesome fairy stories like Grimm's fairy tales and Hansel and Gretel and Little Red Riding Hood and things like that. And she said that they were all about cannibalism because they're all about pretty much, well, a lot of them are about people eating each other or animals eating each other, like the 3 Little Pigs. And she used to make puppets. So she used to make these puppets with her brother and her sister, and she would put on these puppet shows. And she said they were kind of cannibal puppet shows because that's what they would do. They'd end up trying to eat these humans, like the witches trying to eat the children, and the wolf dressed as the grandmother trying to eat Little Red Riding Hood, and the 3 Little Pigs huffing and puffing, and the wolf trying to eat them all. So I suppose it's all about eating people and eating things, eating animals. So it's a bit gruesome, really. And I think a lot of her books have got that kind of dark, satirical, kind of dark sense of humour to them as well. And they're interesting. And I like these very open-ended poems. I think they leave our minds sort of thinking about what the ending is going to be or what happened next. It's almost a bit like a a fairy story or a story, isn't it? You read to a child at night and then you say, well, you'll have to wait till tomorrow night to hear the rest or to hear the next chapter. I like that. Gonna have some water. I've chosen another poem. It's called September Mushrooms. Now, I was out today walking my dog and I saw so many different fungi and mushrooms growing under the leaves, around the leaves. And it's November now. So I think we must have had a good year for fungi this year, because obviously they do come at the end of September in this country. So here we go. It's called September Mushrooms. I missed them again this year. I was immersed elsewhere when the weather broke and enough rain came. In the tree shade, stealthily they nosed up through the sandy loam and the damp leaf litter. A slither of colour, then another, bringing their cryptic news of what goes on down there, the slow dissolve of linum, the filaments and little nodes like fists assembling their nets and mists. Some were bright red, some purple, some brown, some white, some lemon yellow. Through the night they nudged, unfurling like moist fans, living sponges like radar dishes, listening. What did they hear in our human world? Of so-called light and air. What word did they send back down before they withered? Was it beware? Look, the remnants, a leathery globe of dusty spores, a nibbled pebbly moon, a dried half sphere, a blackened ear. I love that. I missed them again this year. I was immersed elsewhere when the weather broke and enough rain came. In the tree shade, stealthily they nosed up through the sandy loam and the damp leaf litter. A slither of colour, then another, bringing their cryptic news of what goes on down there. And slow dissolve of linum, the filaments, the little nodes like fists, assembling their nets and mists. Some were bright red, some purple, some brown, some white, some lemon yellow. Through the night they nudged, unfurling their like moist fans, living sponges like radar dishes, listening. What did they hear in our human world of so-called light and air? What word did they send back down before they withered? Was it beware? Look, the remnants, a leathery globe of dusty spores, a nibbled pebbly moon, a dried half sphere, a blackened ear. I think it's fascinating that we're beginning to know and learn so much more about fungi, mushrooms, and all sorts of different things, different biospheres that live in our woods and our countryside, under the ground, roots talking to each other, plants communicating, and all of the spores going under the ground and creating these filaments of communication and these little tentacles of life that reach out and talk to each other and speak to each other. I don't know about you, wherever you are in the world, but we've got real problems. I mean, I love fungi, I love mushrooms, I love toadstools, I love all of that. But we have a real problem with honey fungus, and it's killing an awful lot of trees at the moment, and you can't get rid of it. I know in Australia there was a huge problem with honey fungus with the eucalyptus forests and trees. And here in this country, we have a lot of our native trees are not surviving because the honey fungus is grabbing hold of them. And I've lost some trees. I've lost a laburnum. We've lost cherry trees, a hibiscus, beautiful hibiscus here, which has just suddenly died. They just kind of suddenly, they flower profusely and then they just suddenly die. So if anybody knows any honey fungus cures, please let me know, because it's a beautiful looking thing when it comes out, but you know that underneath the ground it's doing its nasty stuff to the plants. Right, I'm going to read The Sorcerer's Apprentice. It's interesting, isn't it? This is her latest book of poems, 2021. So it's almost like she's looking back into her childhood and remembering things from her childhood and the things that she's lost in her childhood. And she's going back. So The Sorcerer's Apprentice was was an animation, wasn't it? One of the first animations with Disney, with Mickey Mouse. So I am going to read this. It was in Fantasia, I think. You know the old tale, a machine made by the devil that grinds out anything you wish for with a magic word. And some idiot wishes for salt, and out comes the salt, more and more. But he failed to get a handle on the charm to turn it off. So he throws the thing into the sea, and that's why the sea is salt. The Sorcerer's Apprentice, it's the same story. Go is easy, stop is the hard part. In the beginning, no one thinks about it. Then wait is too late. In our case, the sorcerer is dead. Whoever he was to begin with, and we've lost the instructions, and the magic machine grinds on and on, spewing out mountains of whatnot, and we throw it all into the sea, as we have always done, and this will not end well. How true is that? And look what we're doing, and look what we've done to our seas and our oceans and our rivers, spewing out sewage and rubbish and plastic, toxins, not to mention oil spillages, all sorts of horrendous things. It is really quite shocking. And in Margaret Atwood's lifetime, she's certainly seen it all happen. I'm now going to read another poem that's relatively to do with the sea. It's called Whales, as in whales that live under the sea, rather than Wales as in the country Wales. Everyone cried when they saw it in the square blue sea of the TV, so big and sad. A mother whale carrying her child for 3 days, mourning its death from toxic plastic. So big and sad. We can hardly grasp it. How did we do this by just living in the normal way? Maneuvering our way through package and wrapping, cutting our way to our food through the layer by layer that keeps it fresher. And doesn't everyone? What happened before? How did we ever survive with only paper and glass and tin and hemp and leather and oilskin? But now there's a dead whale right there on the screen, so big and sad. Something must be done. It will be. Will it be? Will we decide to, finally? That's very, very sad. And I know, for one, having read Margaret Atwood's poems and having sort of paid attention to what's going on around me, I've made a very conscious decision to try to just buy things without plastic packaging if I can. And living kind of pretty much on my own a lot of the time, I will just buy 2 bananas, and I will just buy 1 avocado, and I will just buy, whatever it is, an apple, and just throw it in my bag. And I've saved so much on packaging and rubbish and plastic, and it's a very, very good thing to do, to be aware of. And then we won't be seeing these big, sad mothers and their baby whales dead on our television screens, wrapped and choked and just dead from, consuming plastic in our oceans. Right, this is from Dearly, which is the last book, actually. And I am going to read this poem. It's quite a long poem, and it is what this book by Margaret Atwood was named after, this final book of poems that she's written. And it will be my final poem tonight, so I hope you enjoy it. It's an old word fading now. Dearly did I wish, dearly did I long for, I loved him dearly. I make my way along the sidewalk mindfully because of my wrecked knees, about which I give less of a shit than you may imagine. Since there are no other things more important, wait for it, you'll see. Bearing half a coffee in a paper cup with dearly do I regret it, a plastic lid. Trying to remember what words once meant. Dearly, how was it used? Dearly beloved? Dearly beloved, we are gathered. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in this forgotten photo album I came across recently. Fading now, the sepias, the black and whites, the colour prints, everyone's so much younger. The Polaroids. What is a Polaroid? Asks the newborn. Newborn a decade ago. How to explain? You took the picture and then it came out of the top. The top of what? It's that baffled look I see a lot. So hard to describe. The smallest details of how all these dearly gathered together, of how we used to live. We wrapped up garbage in newspaper tied with string. What's newspaper? You see what I mean? String, though, we still have string. It links things together, a string of pearls. That's what they would say. How to keep track of the days, each one shining, each one alone, each one then gone. I've kept some of them in a drawer on paper, those days fading now. Beads can be used for counting, as in rosaries, but I don't like stones around my neck. Along this street there are many flowers, fading now because it's August and dusty and heading into fall. Soon the chrysanthemums will bloom, flowers of the dead in France. Don't think this is morbid, it's just reality. So hard to describe the smallest details of flowers. This is a stamen, nothing to do with men. This is a pistol, nothing to do with guns. It's the smallest details that foil translators, and myself too, trying to describe. See what I mean? You can wander away. You can get lost. Words can do that. Dearly beloved, gathered here together in this closed drawer, fading now, I miss you. I miss the missing, those who left earlier. I miss even those who are still here. I miss you all dearly. Dearly do I sorrow for you. Sorrow, that's another word you don't hear much anymore. I sorrow dearly. I think that's a very moving tribute to a life lived, having gone through history and certain times and development technology, all of that. And also of having those memories in a drawer and of having lost her husband that she had a daughter with that she dearly loved, and having him lose his memory and lose his kind of cognizance with Alzheimer's. And I think that's a very gentle, very sad poem about loss and about losing somebody very, very dear to you. And it actually makes me quite emotional, quite tearful, because I think it's so simple, beautifully put, and very powerful. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read it to you again because I thought it was lovely. Dearly, it's an old word fading now. Dearly did I wish, dearly did I long for, I loved him dearly. I make my way along the sidewalk mindfully because of my wrecked knees, about which I give less of a shit than you may imagine, since there are no other things more important. Wait for it, you'll see. Bearing half a coffee in a paper cup with, dearly do I regret it, a plastic lid, trying to remember what words once meant. Dearly, how was it used? Dearly beloved, we are gathered. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in this forgotten photo album I came across recently. Fading now, the sepias, the black and whites, the colour prints, everyone's so much younger. The Polaroids. What is a Polaroid? Asks the newborn a decade ago. How to explain? You took the picture and then it came out of the top. The top of what? It's that baffled look I see a lot. So hard to describe the smallest details of how all those dearly gathered together, of how we used to live. We wrapped up garbage in newspaper tied with string. What's newspaper? You see what I mean? String, though, we still have string. It links things together. A string of pearls, that's what they would say. How to keep track of the days, each one shining, each one alone. Each one then gone. I've kept some of them in a drawer on paper. Those days fading now. Beads can be used for counting, as in rosaries, but I don't like stones around my neck. Along this street there are many flowers. Fading now because it's August and dusty and heading into fall. Soon the chrysanthemums will bloom, flowers of the dead in France. Don't think this is morbid, it's just reality. So hard to describe the smallest details of flowers. This is a stamen, nothing to do with men. This is a pistol, nothing to do with guns. It's the smallest details that foil translators, and myself too, trying to describe. See what I mean? You can wander away, you can get lost. Words can do that. Dearly beloved, gathered here together in this closed drawer, fading now, I miss you. I miss the missing. Those who left earlier, I miss even those who are still here. I miss you all dearly. Dearly do I sorrow for you. Sorrow. That's another word you don't hear much anymore. I sorrow dearly. So, those were some poems I've just read from Margaret Atwood's Paper Boat Poems book, which are poems that start in 1961 and end in 2023. And that is the last book of poems in the book. So I think it's the whole kind of collection of poetry books. And I will be returning to Margaret Atwood's poems at another date. And I will probably read the first book in the book. I always think it's good to start at the end and work your way back to the beginning, a bit like Benjamin Button. I think it's good to see where somebody ends up, especially somebody who's a prolific author, poet, a major influence in 20th century culture, literature, as Margaret Atwood clearly is. And I think it's time to revisit The Handmaid's Tale, and watch that again and read that again, because it's, I think, a lot more relevant now in the kind of age that we're in, which is getting particularly dangerous in some places for women, and to see her take on things, because I think it'd be absolutely fascinating. Because I think so much, it's a bit like 1984 when George Orwell wrote 1984, 40 or so odd years before that, and how it all kind of became true in the end. So it's very, very fascinating. Anyway, on that note, it's now been almost 40 minutes of me talking about Margaret Atwood and reading her poems. I do hope you enjoyed it. Please do leave comments. Let me see if anybody's left any comments in the comment feed. This is my first time doing a live feed on YouTube, and so I hope that you've enjoyed it. So please do leave comments. I'd like to keep the discussion going. And if you have any other poetry or any other authors that you'd like me to talk about and read, I will definitely come back and do that for you, because it's very enjoyable and I learn an awful lot, and I hope you do. So I hope you've enjoyed that. And yeah, as I said, please leave a comment, please spread the word, please do watch some of my other videos as well. It means a massive amount to me, and I hope you've enjoyed that. So I'm going to go now. I'm going to love you and leave you, and I'm going to get on with the rest of my evening. So Vanessa says good morning. Jen says, well, I think she's asking a friend of hers to come and watch. This was fabulous. Thank you for, I'm going to put my glasses on actually. IBG says, this was fabulous. Thank you for sharing these poems, especially the last one. Catherine says, thank you so much. Love Margaret Atwood so much. She's brilliant. She's a complete icon. She's just so great. And she continues, I think, she's a bit like a really good wine, isn't she? She kind of gets better with age, which I think hopefully all of us will, and all of us are, and all of us do. Right, I'm going to say goodbye now. Good night from me here in the UK. And please, as I said, please do keep putting comments, sharing, telling your friends. And I hope to see you again very soon. Take care, stay safe. Lots and lots of love. Bye-bye.